Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here with this Victa 2-stroke lawnmower, and this Victa lawnmower doesn't have any spark at all. So today in this video I'm going to show you how you can fix your Victa 2-stroke with a no spark issue. So let's get into it. So the first thing that we want to do is to actually check the condition of this lawnmower and confirm that we actually have no spark. So to do that, I've got my spark plug removal tool, and I've got this trusty lead which I've made up, which simply grounds out the spark plug. You don't actually need this, but it just makes your life a little bit easier when you're working on your own. So pop that spark plug boot off, get our spark plug removal tool, let's get that spark plug out, and let's confirm that we actually don't have spark. So with the spark plug out, what we want to do is to put the spark plug back into the boot, nice and firm, just rotate it around so you can see the gap. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ground out the body of the spark plug just like that as we turn the motor over. But because I'm doing this on my own, I do this with my lead. So I just put the lead on the spark plug and then just ground it out onto the engine block. Anywhere will do. And then we need to make sure we're in a run position, and then we're just going to pull the handle and look down at the spark plug for spark. As you can see, there was absolutely no spark there coming from that spark plug. So the next thing we're going to do is to replace the spark plug with a known good spark plug. Now this is actually a brand new spark plug, not mucking around here folks. So let's get that old spark plug out. It's pretty manky as you can see, and we'll pop the new one in. Just in nice and snug. There we go. And ground that out. And we'll pull the handle again and see if we've got spark now. So as you can see, even with a brand new spark plug, there's still no spark. So the next thing we're going to do is to remove the kill switch wires from the carburetor just to confirm that it's not a kill switch problem that's stopping the spark. So let's get the top engine cover off. Just going to use a screwdriver. I've got this on my impact just for the speeding. We need to remove the fuel line going to the carburetor and then lift the top cover off. We can just put that to one side, and now we can get in and remove those ignition wires. So to remove the ignition wires, we do need to make sure the throttle is about in the middle position, and then we need to remove the ignition wires. So you can see that you've got a brown ignition wire that goes straight into the body of the carburetor, and then you've got this black one right here which slides through the side of the boot. This black one's the one that you want to pull out, so just grab it like that and pull it out. You can see I've pulled it out there. Now we know absolutely that the kill switch mechanism is disconnected, and therefore we should have spark. So by removing that kill switch wire, what we're doing, we're just eliminating the possibility that there's a problem with the kill switch componentry in this Victa lawnmower. So now that we've got that removed, we come around and we pull that handle again. To do that, I may just have to take the handle out of that fuel tank, and then we pull the handle again and check for spark. And as you can see, there's clearly still no spark. So that means we must have a problem with the coil in this lawnmower. So let's get the coil off and have a look at that. So to check the coil, what we're going to have to do is to get the engine off of this Victa. Now the easiest way I find to do is just to flip it over. So I throw a sheet down just to protect the paint on the mower, and then we fold these handlebars just so they're going to go a little bit flat, like that. Then we flip our mower over, just like this. And then we can easily get to the bolts on the underside to get that engine off. So let's do that now. So to start with, I'm going to remove the cutting disc with a 24mm socket. So with those bolts out, it's now simply a matter of lifting the deck off of the engine. Just like that. So with the engine off, we can remove this cover plate and then we can see the coil just in here. So to test the coil, you are going to need a multimeter. I've got a couple of different multimeters here. On my right hand side, your left is a fully automatic multimeter. That's the one that I will use today, just because it's a little bit easier and I've got it. But on my left, your right, I've got this manual one. Now what you're going to need to do is go to the ohm setting and select a resistance above 20k ohm. So just looking at this one, we've got 400, 4k, 40k ohms. So we're going to select today the 40k ohm setting if we were to test with this multimeter. However, as I said, I'm going to use the fully automatic one. Now importantly, you do need to understand that on these PowerTorque 2-stroke mowers, there are actually two types of ignition coils. I've got one on my right which has a built-in ignition module. I'll bring you in close so you can see it's just got that little bit of a hump on top. Therefore you know that coil's got the built-in ignition module, whereas the one on your right in my left hand doesn't have that built-in ignition module. So you can see it doesn't have that hump there. What you can see is in the wiring, it has the separate ignition module. So let's have a look at this engine. In here, we can actually see that this one's got the ignition module separate to the coil. Now, I often like to upgrade these just to go without the ignition module and just use wiring straight through to the carburetor because you've got less failure points. However, let's get in and let's diagnose on this one what's actually the problem. So to start with, we're just going to select the ohms because we're going to test the resistance of our coil. Now, as I said, there's actually two different types of coils. So the one with the built-in ignition module, you'll be looking for a resistance of about 14 or 15 kilo ohms combined through this coil, and you simply just test it by connecting to the spark plug lead and then to one of the wires that effectively comes out of the coil. Because I've got this type with the external ignition module, we're going to test the coil on its own. Now we should be getting somewhere of the order of 9.5 kilo ohms when we measure the resistance from the spark plug lead to either side of the terminals of the coil. If it's more than say 10 or 11 k ohms, your spark's only going to be getting weak and decreasing, and therefore it's not going to be effective. And on the ignition module, we're going to test that as well. We should be looking for around 4.5 kilo ohms coming through just the ignition module. That's why those combined is up around the 14, 15 of if we had the built-in module. So let's start by testing the setup with the ignition module external. Now we'll just put the one end on the spark plug end and the other on the coil, and straight away we can see, let's get a good connection. It's jumping around a little bit, but it's pretty consistent on that 8.5. And then on that ignition module, let's have a look on the ignition module. You can see we're getting about 5.4 k ohms, whereas come across to this one which has the built-in ignition module. So jump onto the spark plug wire and onto the other end, and we can see this one's jumping around a little bit as well. 14.2 there. Should have the same on each side. Let's make sure we've got an absolute good connection. So 14.2 on both sides. So let's get in, let's test the coil on this one to start with. So without even removing the coil, what we're going to do is test the resistance of the coil itself. So put one lead in onto the spark plug boot, and then we grab our other lead. I've got the multimeter so you can see the results. We're just going to connect it there. Now straight away we can see 14.6 k ohms. So the resistance is just too high in this coil. We're getting a very, very weak spark. So let's test the other side. See if we get a similar result. 14.6 k ohms. So we've got a significant resistance there. So let's now test the ignition module. So we'll just get in with one probe just in where the black wire comes in, and let's just put the other end on the module. Now we can see 0.15, so it looks like we've got a completely dead ignition module, and we've got a coil that's reading high. So knowing that we've got a bad ignition module and a coil which is reading high, what I'm going to choose to do is I'm just going to install the coil that I've got the built-in ignition module. What we'll do is we'll actually use this wiring loom, so we'll actually just bypass that external ignition module. I'll leave it hooked onto the body, we just won't wire it into the circuit. So let's get this coil off straight away. To do that, we've got a 12mm socket here. So grab that, pop that on there, come in, and we just get this coil off straight away. Just pull that off, get this end off as well, and then we can pull this wiring hopefully all the way through. Yep, just get that out. Now, as I said, because we know that ignition module's junk, I'm just going to cut those wires off. We'll just leave it sitting on this mower. It's no good to us, so we'll just leave it there. Can't be bothered drilling out that pop rivet. So let's get our new coil installed. Something I like to do is just to check if there's any rust on the surfaces which meet up with the magnets on the flywheel. This one's pretty clean, but if there was some rust, I'll just get some sandpaper, just give that a bit of a clean, just like that. You can see straight away this one's actually shining up just a fraction more. But this one really didn't need any cleaning up at all. And then I check on the flywheel and I give that a bit of a clean on the flywheel as well. So then with those surfaces cleaned up on the replacement coil and on the flywheel, next is to actually install the coil. Now what I like to use is a little piece of paper. I've got some brown paper and I use that as a guide between the flywheel magnets and the coil so as to get a good gap, because you want to get the coil as close as possible to the flywheel so that we get as strong as possible spark. So let's get that installed now. So to start with, we'll just take off the boot that goes onto the carburetor and we'll thread the wires through that come through the little hole out to the carburetor. With that through, we can then pop the coil back around into position. So now we can grab our paper and we roughly rotate the flywheel into position, put our paper on those flywheel magnets like that, and then bring the coil in, and it's going to grab on. The power of those magnets easily goes through that paper. And then grab our bolts for our coil, screw those in, and then we can grab our socket to fully fasten those bolts. So with those bolts fully tightened, it's simply a matter of rotating the flywheel now and removing the brown paper. Now we can spin this flywheel easily past those magnets. You can hear there's no scraping at all, so that's just perfect. But what we've got is a really close gap, the thickness of this brown paper. So let's get the engine back onto the frame. So we want to get our cover plate for our engine. Just move the nut there for the cutting disc to one side. So put that back in like that. And then we're going to rotate the base back on top of the engine just like we did to take it off. I genuinely find this is the easiest way. And then straight away I can see the alignment of the bolt holes in here under the deck. So I simply have to just lift the engine up from underneath with my hand, and we just line up whichever one we can get first. This top one looks pretty good. Now remember, we placed our bolts in the orientation, so we're going to put the bolts back into the same holes that they actually came out of. So we'll just get them started by hand. Might take a little bit of jiggling just to get it to catch on those threads. You can see we've got that one now there. So let's move on to this one down the front. So using the correct bolts again, get that lined up. A little bit of jiggling. Let's try a different one. Let's try this back one over here. See if we can get that one started. Yep, that one started nicely. And this front corner one over here looks pretty lined up. There we go, got that one as well. So let's just, there we go. Bit of a jiggle. We've got all of those. So let's grab our impact and wind those all in now. And then let's grab our cutting disc, put that on as well. And once again, grab our impact and wind that in. Perfect. So then it's just a matter of flipping the mower back over. So now we can grab our spark plug and test for spark. So pop our spark plug in the boot. And grab our lead again. Ground that out and then pull the handle and check for spark. And then straight away you can see there's good spark there now. So now that we've confirmed that we've got spark back onto this lawnmower, we need to pop our kill switch ignition wires back into the carburetor. So to do that, the first thing we need to check is we've still got the throttle in about the halfway position, and then let's come down into the wiring. Now what we're going to do is put that boot back on. So let's put that boot back on and get that together. So to get that boot back on, probably want to take that little rubber piece off there. Let's pop the boot on just like that, and then I've actually got a new one of those rubber pieces to go on that kill switch wire, so let's just pop that on just like that. That'll be perfect. And then what we want to do is we want to feed that through into the back of the carburetor, just in like that. So yep, just feed it in like that, and with that wire fed in, you can see that hole up there. So you just want to line up this boot over that hole, and then we'll grab our other ignition wire, bring that around, and we need to poke that through the hole. Now this one's a little bit tight, so let's just remove the decompressor tube. Let's get that out the way, rotate the carburetor, get that out the way. Let's see if we can get the ignition wire in up from underneath. Might be just a little bit easier. There we go. That's thread through nicely, and you can see that's come through the other end. So we've got that back in place. We can put our decompressor hose back on, bring that around, pop that all back together, click that carburetor back into place. That's on there like that, and we should be now good to go for a test start. Now, having just reinstalled those kill switch ignition wires into the carburetor, I like to confirm that we've still got spark. So I just get down here and pull the handle, and I can see that we've still got spark. And then importantly, we'll move it to the stop position. I want to pull it again now and see that we don't have spark. So, and absolutely, in that position, we don't have spark. But if I bring it back to the sort of normal run position, let's pull it again, and once again we've got good spark. So spark's working, throttle stops working. Let's put the mower back together and see if she'll run. So let's pop the spark plug back in and then pop the fuel tank on. I like to pull a bit of rope out first because it's always a little bit fiddly to get this on. Just poke it through the grey plastic first with these ones, and then poke that handle up through the hole. Can be a little bit fiddly to get that through. We've got that there now, and then pop that into those right holes, and then tighten the screws down for the cover. Now you do just have to be careful. I'm using my impact. It is an alloy starter, so don't over tighten those and break the starter. I've seen a few of those come in like that. And then finally reconnect that fuel line to that carburetor. So with the spark restored and the mower all put back together, let's see if she'll start. So turn the fuel on, give her 3 primes, come around, we'll go down, back to the stop position and to the start position, and we'll give it a pull. Alright, give it a couple more primes. Oh, I can actually see I haven't connected the fuel line properly, so just reconnect that fuel line properly. Give it 3 primes, go down, back to the stop and to the start position, and we'll give it a pull. And it sounds like we've got a bit of a loose blade there, but as you can see, we've got this Victa 2-stroke back to a running condition. So that's how you restore the spark on your Victa 2-stroke. As you saw, I took you through the diagnosis steps, and in the end, we had to replace the coil. I showed you how to measure the resistance and the 2 different types of coil that you're going to find on the Victa 2-stroke, the late model PowerTorques, where you've either got the ignition module built into that coil or it's separate. I'll put all those resistance values into the description of the video so that you can measure your coils and be confident in the condition and what you're diagnosing. So if you have liked the video, give us a like, drop us a comment down below. It's truly appreciated. And if you've made it this far, do subscribe to the video and also think about hitting that join button. I've added a couple of membership tiers. There's a Victa tier, it's pretty cheap, $1.49 a month, and that's just going to help me produce more of these videos for you to enjoy and repair your mowers. But also on the channel you'll find DIY maintenance and repairs on vehicles. On the channel we've got the Mercedes, the Audi A3, the Mazda 3, the early Ford Falcon. So if you're interested in any of that content as well, do subscribe to the channel. But until next time, have a good evening.